The street was alive with the sounds of bustling pedestrians and the horns of impatient drivers. Skyscrapers towered overhead, casting long shadows on the asphalt below. But at the center of this urban chaos, a scene unfolded that would shatter the day's mundanity, a fierce confrontation that would be talked about long after it had ended. In the midst of it all, a woman in a sharp, gray business suit glided her wheelchair into view, her muscles tensing with strength as she pushed forward. The sun caught the glint of a large hammer in her hands, angled threateningly toward the man sprawled on the ground before her. He was dressed sharply in a dark suit, but his panicked expression contrasted sharply with his perfectly fitted attire. Panic mirrored on his face as he looked between the hammer and the determined eyes of the woman who bore an intensity that shook the very essence of the crowded street. "HOA had no idea I'm a federal judge," she yelled, her voice booming with authority and rage that could rival a thunderstorm. Bystanders halted their steps, their eyes wide with disbelief, half stunned and half amused. Little did they know, this confrontation was not merely a spectacle, it was the fiery climax of a battle that had been brewing for months. Across the pavement, the man grimaced, struggling to push himself off the ground. "See Kathy, please?" "I was just following the regulations," he stammered in a tone that was half indignation, half fear. A flicker of recognition pierced Kathy's gaze. She remembered the man. Derek was not just a simple neighbor. He was the self-appointed president of the local homeowners association, a group notorious for its draconian rules and regulations. It was he who had deemed her flower garden, a proud and vibrant rack of wildflowers in her small front yard, an eyesore, and issued her a citation. Today was not about flowers, it was about standing her ground. With one swift movement, Kathy lifted the hammer and pointed it directly at Derek. "You call this a regulation? You call wrecking people's lives because they don't fit your cookie-cutter mold following the rules." Derek winced, both from fear of the hammer and the impact of her words. The crowd leaned in closer, their curiosity piqued, and whispers of the neighborhood's latest drama fluttered through the air. Someone dared to laugh nervously, another shouted, "Get him, lady," as enthusiasm brewed like a boiling pot. The energy crackled, the city's heart thumped loudly in her ears. As laughter echoed around them, Kathy's anger simmered just beneath the surface. "I may be in this chair, but I refuse to let anyone else dictate my life." With that, she drew back the hammer and swung it downward. But instead of meeting the ground or Derek's cowering form, the hammer crashed into a pile of concrete debris that was left behind by road construction. The debris exploded, sending chunks flying in every direction. Gasps erupted from the observing crowd, their expressions turning from amusement to horror. In that fleeting moment of chaos, Kathy caught a glimpse of realization in Derek's eyes, a flicker of understanding that what had started as a petty neighborhood grievance was spiraling into something much larger, something dangerous. And then, among the debris, something glinted, a small object that caught the afternoon light. Kathy's eyes narrowed as she wheeled closer, intrigued. Derek, still on the ground, scrambled backward, panic tightening its grip on him as he attempted to distance himself from whatever it was. "What have you done?" he gasped, pointing at the object with a trembling finger. "You have no idea what you're messing with." Kathy's heart raced. What was it? Was it another weapon, or something even more treacherous hidden beneath the chaos? "Don't play games with me, Derek," she shot back, her voice steady despite the swirling uncertainty. "You started this, and now you're going to finish it." As she reached for the object, shadows danced between the debris, and the crowd braced themselves for what was next. Would they witness an exhilarating twist in this urban drama, or was it about to spiral into a calamity that no one could foresee? With thunderous footsteps approaching and the tension skyrocketing, Kathy was about to discover that this confrontation was only the beginning of a far deeper conspiracy that tied to the very heart of the city. Little did she know, the hammer was just the first tool of justice she would wield on a path that would lead her into uncharted territory, both on the streets and in her own heart. Kathy's fingers brushed against the mysterious object hidden within the debris, her breath catching in her throat. Derek's desperate gasps echoed in her ears as she seized it from the rubble, revealing a small, intricately designed key that shimmered with an otherworldly brilliance. The moment she grasped it, an unsettling chill swept through the air. Kathy felt an electric charge, as if the key itself was alive, holding secrets that no ordinary person could fathom. "What is this?" she demanded, turning towards Derek, who had now pushed himself up into a seated position, his face pale as he regarded the key with a mix of fear and disbelief. It can't be," he stammered, eyes wide. "That's... what? What is it?" Kathy pressed, unwilling to let fear cloud her resolve. The crowd had fallen silent, all eyes glued to the unfolding drama, caught between entertainment and an unsettling sense of impending danger. Derek's gaze flicked toward her hammer, his brain racing. "You really don't know, do you? That key unlocks something much bigger than you, or me, or even this absurd HOA dispute." Kathy leaned in closer. "Explain yourself." He hesitated, glancing at the onlookers, then down at the ground as if searching for the right words. All right. You remember the old building that used to stand a few blocks from here? The one they tore down for a new development? That site was home to something secret. The key, they say it can open a hidden vault that holds documents and evidence about the corrupt deals made by our city's elite. The word corrupt echoed in her mind, resonating more powerfully than any accusation a mere HOA president could throw her way. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way the city had casually dismissed her pleas for help about the citations, the way Derek had been so relentless in enforcing the association's rules. There was a much larger game at play here. She glanced at the key, its shine pulsing with promise. "And why should I believe you?" she challenged, the wheels of her mind turning rapidly. Derek raised his hands defensively, his voice rising. "Because if you don't, they'll come for us. You think they're afraid of you in that chair? One way or another, they'll silence anyone who gets in the way." Unsure if his motive was true fear or a desire to control the narrative, Kathy's mind flared with determination. If what he said was true, she was no longer just defending her garden. She was on the brink of unearthing a conspiracy that could shake the very foundations of the city. "Fine," she said, her voice steady now with purpose. "If you're telling the truth, then we need to find that vault. I want answers, not just for myself, but for anyone else they've tried to silence." Derek's mouth dropped open in disbelief. "You really think we can do this? You in a wheelchair, and me?" "I don't care what I look like," Kathy interrupted. "What I care about is shoving your damn regulations back down your throat." The crowd roared in approval, voices bubbling with excitement at the unexpected twist. Feeling their energy, Kathy allowed herself to absorb their determination, feeding her resolve. Derek nodded, breaking from the spell of fear that had gripped him. "Okay, let's find the vault. But if you're going to do this, we have to be smart. They're not just going to let us waltz in." "What's the plan, Derek?" Kathy asked, a tinge of skepticism edging into her voice. He chewed his lip, his mind racing. "We need to get to the old site, but first we need supplies, tools to dig, to break into whatever they've kept buried. If we can find allies. Let's not waste time talking. We'll figure it out on the move." Kathy cut him off, the fire in her veins igniting her senses. She pushed her wheelchair forward, determined to make her mark on this twisting turn of fate. With Derek reluctantly trailing beside her, they left the crowd behind, the city's chaotic pulse swirling around them. They learned quickly that navigating through the urban jungle was as challenging as extracting secrets from the past, dodging quizzical gazes and the afternoon sun that bore down on them both. They were moving deeper into the heart of the city, on a quest entangled in danger, politics, and power, a journey that was bound to change everything. As they arrived at the site of the demolished building, the remnants of brick and steel loomed ominously. The area was eerily quiet, save for the distant sounds of construction in progress. They snuck around the perimeter, eyes peeled for anyone who might pose a threat, a security guard, a nosy neighbor, or even worse, the elite who held the reins of the secret. "Over there," Derek murmured, pointing to a slightly raised section of the foundation where the ground looked different. Kathy nodded, her heart racing as she engaged the wheels of her chair with fervor. This was it, the moment they had both been waiting for. As they approached the area, she spotted an old, rusted grate. The key glimmered in her pocket, buzzing with energy as if it anticipated the truth lying within. "Let's dig," she declared, feeling unstoppable. As they began to excavate the dirt, glancing nervously around, Kathy's mind raced ahead. What would they discover? Would they find the records they were seeking, or would they inadvertently awaken a sleeping beast that could put an end to their lives? The weight of destiny hung in the air, thick and heavy, as Kathy and Derek began their descent into the unknown. As Kathy and Derek dug into the earth, each scoop of dirt felt like peeling back the layers of a forgotten past, a past that was buried but not completely lost. The key sat heavy in her pocket, almost pulsing with an energy that heightened her senses. Daylight waned, casting elongated shadows across the skeletal remains of the demolished building, and the air grew thick with tension and uncertainty. Finally, beneath a particularly stubborn layer of soil, the sound of metal against metal met their ears. Kathy and Derek exchanged a glance, excitement knitting their brows together. With shared determination, they cleared away the remaining dirt, their fingers finally exposing an old, rusted hatch. It was almost camouflaged among the rubble, as if it had been waiting for someone brave enough to search for it. Kathy leaned forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "This is it," she murmured, brushing dirt off the key that had felt so heavy in her pocket. With shaking hands, she inserted it into the keyhole. The metallic click echoed through the stillness, a thunderous roar in the gathering gloom. "Are you ready?" Derek asked, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a mix of dread and anticipation. Kathy nodded. She had no room for fear now. All she needed was the truth. With a sharp turn of the key, the hatch creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into the depths below. A chill swept through her, mingling with an adrenaline rush that made her feel invincible. She took a deep breath and wheeled herself to the edge, peering into the shadows. "Let's go," she urged, her voice resolute. Derek hesitated for a moment, practically trembling as he looked into the inky darkness. "Wait, what if it's a trap?" he stammered, suddenly fraught with doubt. "What if the HOA or whoever there is ready for us?" Kathy glanced over at him, her expression firm. "We either climb down and see what we're up against, or we let them win without putting up a fight. I can't turn back now." She knew the risk, but the thrill of uncovering the truth was far more powerful than any fear. Together, they descended the staircase, their steps echoing against the cold, damp walls. Each moment felt monumental, as if they were crossing into the realm of secrets long hidden from the public eye. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a dimly lit room with walls lined with crates and old documents, with a pervasive mustiness lingering in the air. Kathy's fingers trembled as she navigated within her wheelchair, looking around in awe. Crates were stamped with the names of various city departments, all of them dusty relics of bureaucracy. She could scarcely believe it. This treasure trove of information was the evidence they had been searching for. "I can't believe it," Derek breathed, his eyes wide. "This is insane." "Help me open this one," Kathy said, pointing to a large crate that looked relatively intact. With Derek's help, they pried the crate open, revealing stacks of old files and documents, papers filled with contracts, financial records, and handwritten notes that hinted at misconduct. "Yes, this is it," Kathy exclaimed, rifling through the papers. "These could hold everything we need to expose them." Her fingers danced over the documents, the weight of their importance sending shivers down her spine. She grabbed a stack of papers that detailed illicit transactions, each name listed revealing connections she could scarcely comprehend. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the stairs. The sound of hurried footsteps reverberated off the walls, sending a jolt of fear racing through Kathy's heart. "Derek, we're not alone," she hissed, urgency flooding her voice.
"Quick.
"We need to hide," he urged, glancing around frantically for a place to conceal themselves. Kathy's eyes darted to a pile of old crates stacked in the corner. Over there, she pointed, and they swiftly maneuvered the wheelchair and themselves behind the crates, hearts racing, breath shallow. As they crouched in the shadows, the footsteps grew louder, echoing through the bunker-like room. Kathy held her breath, a mix of fear and adrenaline swirling inside her. She peered through a narrow gap between the crates and saw 3 figures descending the staircase, their silhouettes taking form in the faint light. The tallest of the 3 took the lead, exuding an air of authority that sent chills down her spine. "What do you mean they're not here?" A deep voice emerged, laced with anger. "We were supposed to handle this. Where's the file?" Derek shifted nervously beside her. "They're here for what we just uncovered," he whispered, panic rising in his throat. "If they find us..." "Show." Kathy pressed a finger to her lips, lacing her grip tightly around the keys and documents they had bravely unearthed. One of the men broke off from the others, stalking closer to their hiding spot. Kathy's heart raced louder than her thoughts, each thump echoing in her ears as he inspected the room. A sheet of paper floated from her grasp, slipping away into the air. Time seemed to freeze as it fluttered to the ground, right at the man's feet. "Did you hear that?" he called, his voice now sharp and commanding. "Yeah, it came from over there," the other 2 confirmed, drifting toward the crates just as Kathy's mind screamed for escape. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration ignited. "Derek, get ready to move," she whispered fiercely. "When I say go, we make a break for it." Derek nodded, fear mingling with determination in his eyes as they braced for what came next. With a quick glance to ensure they were still undiscovered, Kathy steeled herself. She could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down, urging her to act. "Now," she shouted, propelling herself forward just as the men turned toward the noise. In a flash, they burst from their hiding place, racing towards the stairs. But with every ounce of strength, Kathy pushed her wheelchair down the steps, urgency propelling them both. Each heartbeat echoed the desperation that burned within her. They couldn't let the light of truth dim before it was exposed. As they fled into the night, Kathy knew one truth for certain. This was no longer just about her garden. It was about unearthing a conspiracy that ran far deeper than either of them had imagined. Kathy and Derek burst through the hatch and into the moonlit night, the cool air hitting their faces with a refreshing force that contrasted starkly against the suffocating chaos they had just fled. Every muscle in Kathy's body screamed for her to push harder, faster, as they raced away from the looming structure that held secrets meant to be buried forever. "What now?" Derek gasped, his breath coming in ragged bursts. They had made it outside, but the danger was not yet behind them. The figures from the bunker could emerge at any moment, and they both knew the clock was ticking. "First, we need to get to safety," Kathy replied, her mind whirling with options. They couldn't go back to her house, not if they were being pursued. "There's a coffee shop a few blocks down. They know me there. I can hide in the back." With adrenaline fueling her determination, Kathy navigated her wheelchair through the darkened streets, soon joined by Derek, who glanced over his shoulder with increasing anxiety. "Are you sure they won't find us there?" "We'll be fine," Kathy insisted, although her own uncertainty gnawed at her. "Maybe if we can just buy some time, we can figure out our next move." They maneuvered through alleyways and side streets, using the cover of night to keep out of sight. Finally reaching the coffee shop, Kathy quickly wheeled her way inside. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled her senses, a comforting balm in the midst of chaos. "Kathy," exclaimed Jenna, the barista, as she emerged from behind the counter, surprise flickering across her face. "What happened? You look..." "No time to explain," Kathy interrupted, her voice tinged with urgency. "I need a place to hide, and I need your phone. We have to call the police." "Of course. Come this way," Jenna said, leading them to the staff break room. It was small but provided enough cover in the back corner where they could stay hidden. As soon as they were behind the door and out of sight, Kathy took a deep breath, glancing at Derek, who was still trembling with anxiety. "Did we lose them?" he asked, trying to steady his breath. "I hope so, but we have to be quick." Kathy's fingers danced over her phone as she dialed the police. The connection felt like a cruel, maddening eternity of waiting as the line rang. Just as she was beginning to doubt if anyone would answer, a voice on the other end finally broke through. 911. What's your emergency? Kathy quickly relayed their harrowing situation, explaining about the hidden bunker, the documents, and the men who were after them. We need help. The city officials, they're involved in something corrupt, and we have evidence. You're safe for now. We are dispatching a unit to your location, the operator assured her. Please stay on the line. Kathy's heart sank slightly, filled with a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. They could still be in danger. The men might realize she had called for help. She exchanged anxious glances with Derek, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. What do we do if they come here? He whispered, his voice laced with fear. We'll figure it out, Kathy said, forcing an edge of confidence into her tone. If they come through the front, we'll have time to escape out the back. Just keep calm. Minutes ticked by, stretching painfully, and Kathy couldn't shake the sensation that they were still being hunted. After what felt like an eternity, they finally heard the unmistakable sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder as they approached the coffee shop. Relief surged within her, momentarily overpowering her fear. While she remained on the phone with the operator, Jenna peeked through the door's small window and grimaced. There's a police car outside now. 2 officers are entering, she announced, tension etched on her face. You're safe. Moments later, the door swung open, and the 2 officers stepped in, looking around the break room. Kathy, one called out, his voice authoritative yet calm. That's us. Kathy shouted back, wheeling forward. We're in here. The officers quickly came to their side, scanning them for injuries, but seeming more concerned about the situation they had described. Can you start from the beginning? One of the officers asked, his eyes serious as he faced them. Kathy took a deep breath and began recounting their harrowing experience. How they discovered the bunker, the documents they had found, and how they had fled from the men who threatened their lives. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions growing more serious by the moment. This is potentially very serious, the second officer stated, jotting down notes. We need to see those documents. It sounds like you stumbled upon something big. Right, Kathy replied desperately. We need to get to them before those men do. Derek, finding his voice, added, There's a safe place we can show you. We can take you back to the site. The officers nodded, securing their surroundings. All right, let's move quickly, the first officer instructed. We'll need additional units on standby. Together, they formed a plan. Kathy, Derek, and the officers would return to the bunker, armed with the knowledge they had discovered and the promise of backup to ensure their safety. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kathy felt the weight of fear lift slightly from her shoulders. As they stepped out of the coffee shop and into the night, she scanned the street, looking for any sign of danger. The silhouettes of the officers moved resolutely beside her, and she could feel the tingling anticipation of uncovering the truth surging within her. Whatever happens next, we can't back down, she said, turning to Derek, who nodded fervently. Together, he affirmed, his voice steady. With that, they felt a shared resolve unify their spirits, a bond formed through the flames of adversity. As they made their way back to the site, Kathy couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The truth was out there, and soon, it would no longer be a secret. Together, they would find a way to expose it. In this battle against deception, they had each other, and they had forged a path toward justice, one that refused to be silenced, no matter the stakes.